Hey there everybody, Phil here for AndroidCentral.com. This is the brand new Huawei Mate S. It is a very cool phone. Let's go take a look. So we've got a bit of a running joke here at Android Central, where those of us from the US are just discovering smartphone manufacturers the rest of the world has enjoyed for some time. And nowhere is that more true than when it comes to Chinese manufacturer Huawei. This is its latest, the Mate S, announced here at IFA in Berlin. It's got a 5.5-inch AMOLED display on an aluminum body that feels just about as good as anything you've ever seen from Apple or HTC, which also excel at that sort of metalwork. The display is only 1080p, but from a resolution standpoint, we're still just fine with that. It looks decent enough, but where things start to break down a little bit is when you're anywhere other than indoors. It's just not good outside at all, which for me is a pretty big deal breaker. Performance after a couple days use is pretty decent. This is an untested processor for me. It's a high silicon Kirin 935, and it's something we won't see in North America anytime soon, but it does smartphone things just fine in the few days that I've used it. There are a couple versions of this phone. We've got a 32GB model here with 3 gigs of RAM, but there's also going to be a 128GB model that includes a pressure-sensitive display. It's called Force Touch, and it's exactly like what Apple's doing on its new trackpads, and probably on the iPhone at some point. It lets you do a number of things, like weigh fruit or any other relatively light thing that needs to be weighed for some reason, but you can also do other pressure-sensitive things with it. The real standout feature here for me, though, is the fingerprint scanner, especially since we're all expecting a Huawei Nexus in its fingerprint scanner in the near future. I can't say enough about this. It's incredibly accurate and ridiculously fast. You just tap and your phone unlocks and gets you to the home screen or whatever else it was you were doing. Being on the back means it's always within reach as soon as you pick up the phone, but it does sort of limit the use of which fingers you use to unlock it. It also has some interesting little gesture options here that you can use with it. As we've said any number of times in any number of previous reviews, software is still where Huawei struggles. Looks like they fixed, or at least removed, most of the buggy points we saw in the P8, though some still remain, as you can see with this unreadable Gmail notification. But we still have a feeling that updated EMUI user interface just won't win over Android purists. In any event, a third-party launcher helps somewhat, though notifications and settings are still drastically different than what you're used to. But at least the Mate is on a current version of Android, running Android 5.1.1 Lollipop. The 13-megapixel camera also seems to be what we've come to expect from Huawei. It's decent, but it's not spectacular. It'll probably do well enough for most folks out there, but it's just not as good as what we've got from LG or Samsung. But the real sticking point here may be the price. 650 euros or upwards of $700 US. Again, it's a decent phone, but these days we're awash in a sea of good phones that cost half that much in the US as well as around the rest of the world. But look past that, and Huawei fans, I think, have something to look forward to here in the Mate S.